Welcome to Inspiring Innovation, where your host, Sean Frost, is joined by experts in the manufacturing industry to discuss bringing big ideas to life. Join us every episode for a deep dive into manufacturing trends, processes, innovation, and how to be successful in the ever-changing world of manufacturing.
Welcome back to our second episode of our happy hour with Brian Weber. We're having a lot of fun here. We decided we're having so much fun that we thought we should make this into a two-part episode. So this has been a lot of fun. We're digging into manufacturing stories, value that we brought to customers in different ways, the importance of our associates, and we're just going to keep going. So we appreciate you joining for the first part. Thank you for tuning in to part two. Cheers to the second round of our Manufacturing Happy Hour, inspired by the Manufacturing Happy Hour podcast. So with no further ado, Brian Weber, our Chief Operating Officer, is still here and back. And cheers, Brian.
Cheers. Thanks, Sean.
We're sitting here with these 75-year in business Polo cups.
That's right.
Imagine that we're toasting the 100-year Polo cups. What do you hope that you're going to say in that toast?
Wow. Well, I hope the fishing and the golf's been good because I'm probably going to be well retired. But
be doing a wheel.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What would I say after 100 years of Polo being in business? Similar to what I say with us being in business 75 years. What an accomplishment. There's not a lot of companies that can say or claim that they've been in business this long. And there's a lot of reasons why companies are no longer in business. Polo has weathered the storms. I like to think that we've done that because we're careful, we're opportunistic, we ensure that we're not taking too big risks. And at 100 years, I certainly hope that the company culture is the same as it is now, and that is that our most important resource is our employee, and we have a diverse customer base, and we serve a lot of markets. And there's a lot of products. One of the things I'm most proud of is a part of a cog in the Polo machine, so to speak, is I see our products all the time. And they never say Polo on them, but, I call it out in the wild. You see a motorcycle going down the road with a product being made on it. I recently went to a pancake breakfast in my hometown to support the local fire department, and they have all their equipment on display. And I'm able to say, we make that. We help design that. There's just so many things that Polo has made and done over the years that I'm certainly proud of, and I hope our customers and our associates are also proud of the work we did.
See the products out in the wild is always gratifying. I want to point out for this episode, since we kind of touched on it the last time, that we do have these classy glasses, but we're also here to party.
Yeah,
we got Busch Light.
It's the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah, it's like a tuxedo T-shirt.
Right, exactly. Well, I appreciate the nod to Iowa, with the Iowa water. I'm an Iowa boy, born and raised. Can't find a better place to raise a family. And one of the things I wanted to say is, it's exciting to be part of this podcast series that you guys have put on, because I've seen the other guests that you've had, and I think, why the heck would they want me? Because the experience and the expertise of your guests, wow, pretty impressive, and I'm just glad to be part of it.
So if you had to describe Polo Custom products using only movie titles or movie lines, what would you go with?
That's a hard one, because if you're just talking titles, I think that's tough. There's I think a movie called For All Mankind. I'm kind of a space buff, and again, we just mentioned it, how proud I am that doesn't matter what market or what product we're talking about. You see our products out all over the place, different things, and people are using them in different ways, and essentially they're all benefiting. It's just making life better. So that's if you're talking about a movie title. But if you're talking about a movie, I have to say something like Forrest Gump, because he's in all these different scenarios, and it doesn't matter what comes at him. He kind of makes lemonade out of lemons and perseveres and overcomes, and is just a all in all good person. And I think when you're good and when you treat people right, good things happen. And I think that was the kind of the underlying theme of that movie. And I think that kind of embodies Polo's corporate culture. A lot of companies have a culture and it's a banner that they hang in their buildings or whatever, but I can truly say that Polo lives and breathes the culture. And if somebody doesn't fit with the culture, they're not with the company very long. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question, I guess.
That's a huge part of what's made Polo successful is our reputation with our customers. And they feel that we're good people here to help them deliver their products to the world, help them grow. I love that. I mean, this should be a HR recruiting tool for our culture. You're either going to fit or you're not.
I had the opportunity recently to talk with one of our customers. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk with a lot of our customers frequently. And I got to tell this customer this story, and it made me proud. I was recently at a college graduation and was sitting in the stands waiting for the ceremony to start. And an older gentleman walked up the aisle right to my left. I was maybe 5 feet away, and I happened to notice that he was wearing something that I recognized as a medical product that really allowed him to come to that event and participate in whoever he was watching graduate. I'm guessing a grandchild based on his age, but I don't like to assume. So he was able to attend that where otherwise he may not have been. And I was able to nudge my wife and say, hey, look at that. We make a part of that. And it's allowing him to be here. Those are the kinds of things that when you see that, it makes all the challenges and all of the, work's never easy. It doesn't matter what job you have. There's always challenges and there's always things that you go home and you may be frustrated or wore out. But when you see something like that, think, wow, we allowed that guy to go see his grandson, granddaughter graduate from college. It's pretty cool.
What's the funniest or most embarrassing mistake that you've made at Polo, and how can you laugh about it now?
Wow. I remember when I was a young engineer, I was hired as an industrial engineer by education. I was hired as a manufacturing engineer. So my job is lean initiatives and efficiency improvements. I happened to also be a motorcycle enthusiast at the time, and we had the opportunity to go visit a customer of ours, a motorcycle manufacturer, and we were working on a project, and I got to go along, and that's where I met, one of the sales reps that ended up being a mentor. And we got an opportunity to make a product. And so I came back and I worked with our product development team to design what I thought was, the ultimate product. And I didn't know what I didn't know. It was really the first time I'd been involved with product development and this kind of thing. And I remember taking back this sample that in hindsight, I am so embarrassed about. It was a prototype, so it wasn't meant to be perfect. But everything about it in hindsight to me seems like, wow, how I should be embarrassed that I even took that in. Mm-hmm. Now, it evolved into a product that to this day I still see on motorcycles and they still sell. So that's 25 years. But those are the kinds of things that, I may be embarrassed about, or maybe I shouldn't be embarrassed about, but I just think, wow, I shake my head. But luckily there hasn't been anything that overtly somebody said, how could you have done this? So I'm the kind of guy that I just kind of own it. If I do something stupid, it's like, it's what I did. But that I occasionally think about that, especially when I see one of those on a motorcycle and think where, the evolution of that product, the first round sample, the material that I selected and because I was trying to give it a leather look, but have a low price point. So I picked this kind of cheesy synthetic leather. The bulkiness of it ended up being very streamlined and form-fitting. I just think, wow, it came a long way.
Hey,
it's not one I would hang in the in the showroom.
Yeah, it's come a long way, just like all of us. So, I mean, that's interesting coming from the line of work that you're in too, because I just look at like my writing or an email or something, an early podcast or whatever, and I'm just like, oh God, what was I thinking then? And so that's pretty cool though to see it evolve to what it is today, on something that's still flying around on these motorcycles. If you could instantly gain one superpower to help Polo in your role, what would it be and how would you use it?
I'm not a fan of the superhero type movies, so I don't know all of them, but I do know one of Flash, and I don't know all his powers, but I know he's very quick and can get from one place to another. And that's, being the fact that we have plants in Iowa and Topeka, Kansas, and Louisville, Mississippi, and headquarters in Kansas and affiliate plants in the Caribbean and Southeast Asia. I don't feel like I get to any of them as much as I'd like to. And it would be nice to be able to, be in Monticello, Iowa from 8 to 10 and from, Topeka from 10 to noon, and then in Louisville in the afternoon, and then back in my bed for the evening. So definitely when you have a company as spread out as ours, the logistics can be tough and the travel can be tough. I was in Iowa this morning. I'm in Kansas right now, and I'll be in Mississippi tomorrow. And, so it's a lot of travel, but it's worth it to be able to interact with our associates.
I try to get out to them as often as I possibly can as well. So yeah, that's a great one. Well, that concludes our formal questions that we've prepared for. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss over a beer?
We talk a lot about our successes and points at which we thought, what were we doing? And it occurred to me earlier that based on one of your questions, when we were in the COVID times, Polo at that time with our connections in Southeast Asia, were able to provide standard surgical masks, which were in very short supply. A lot of our customers, including some of our medical customers, surprisingly. And that was so successful, and there was such a demand. We looked at designing and building an automated system to make N95 surgical masks. We certainly felt like we had the expertise. We had the supply base, already part of our supply base, and the expertise to design the automation. And we partnered with a company, and they had already done some work with Ford or General Motors to develop this. And so we got very close to pulling the trigger on equipment that would make millions of these masks. And about the time that we were ready to place the PO for the equipment, we were also lining up all of the test equipment we would need, because as an N95 mask, there's a lot of test requirements to make sure that it is truly an N95 type mask. And we found out there were a lot of companies buying this equipment. And I think that's another example of where Polo reevaluated the trajectory we were on and said, is this really the smart thing to do now? By the time we call it 6 months of lead time, I think it was about 6 months, we would get these things, is the pandemic going to be over? Or is there still going to be demand? But it seemed to us that given all the equipment that was being purchased, that there was probably going to be a lot of people entering this market. Sure enough, as an executive team, we decided, yeah, let's pull back, let's reevaluate, let's abandon that plan. And sure enough, probably within 3 or 4 months, the masks that were 15 cents a piece pre-pandemic that had jumped to $4 a piece, and we thought maybe we'd sell them for $1.50, $2. By the time the end of that 6 months, that would have been our lead time rolled around. Those things everybody was making so many of them that they were less than 10 cents a piece. So the price was actually lower than pre-pandemic. So just another example of where Polo, I think, thought about what we were doing, didn't rush into something. Even though we knew we could do it, we realized it wasn't the right move for us. And we try and take that same approach on behalf of our customers all the time.
A mutual contact of ours that worked for an automation company showed me his colleague that sold a lot of those automated machines, and explained his role to me with a fair amount of resentment because of all the machines that guy sold and all the money he was counting as a commissioned salesperson.
I'm sure the machine manufacturers,
in the right place at the right time, right?
The machine manufacturers had nothing to worry about. There was no risk for them. There was a lot of risk for us. And I have to give kudos to our sales team, your team. They evaluated the landscape. They reevaluated the landscape. They put a pencil to paper and realized the potential wasn't there anymore. And even though we had approval, we were ready to write the check, cooler heads prevail. It wouldn't have been disastrous to Polo, but it certainly wouldn't have been a financial win for Polo to invest in that equipment and have it, because it was very specialized equipment. Yeah, that was all the talk of the pandemic and some of the things that we've done right and wrong and maybe embarrassing moments. And, that just got me thinking, that's a good example of consideration that we gave after the fact. That was the right move.
Avoiding that strong thing says a lot about the leadership of this company. And I appreciate the kudos to the sales team. I do need to acknowledge the fact that I feel like we are standing on the shoulders of giants, and that includes our retired chairman of the board. It includes the retired CEO you mentioned. It includes you. It includes the current leadership of our company that's been around for a long time. Fortunate to be at Polo at this time when you guys have established such an incredible culture, such an incredible track history, and really accomplished quite a bit. And we're just taking advantage of that and selling it. So you make our job easy, and we appreciate that, Brian.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you, and it's neat to have been engaged with so many different companies, well-known companies that, you say the name, everybody knows who you're talking about, knows what they do, the products they make, and it's interesting you've seen it, I've seen it, where all of a sudden you run into somebody that you worked with this company, and now they're in a different company that we're working with, and it may be because they suggested Polo, or it may just be happenstance that we were already working with them, and you realize how small of a world it is, even in a global manufacturing environment. The things that we do, it is a niche manufacturing process, and glad to be part of it. Glad to work with you and your team.
Those trade shows get smaller and smaller. So, X person from that company, who supplied that to what, and it just, the circles get tighter and tighter, and it's a really fascinating world. I'm honored to be a part of it with you too. So cheers. Thank you for the Happy Hour podcast.
It's great. You need to have a home like this.
Probably
attract a lot more people.
If you tuned into part 1, you heard the most unique product line that we've ever discussed on this podcast. So thank you for joining. If you joined us for part 1 and part 2, kudos, extra brownie points. Subscribe, like, comment what you want to hear more of. We really appreciate you listening. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. See ya.
Cheers.
Cheers.